Caitlin Clark comes back and wins FIBA qualifier MVP. While all the other players are staying fresh, staying in the groove, going...
Look closely at the gold medals around their necks. They tell a story, but not necessarily the one you are being sold. Team USA's victory over Spain women's national basketball team, with a final score of 84-70, is being framed as a triumph of veteran leadership. Yet beneath that surface lies a far more controversial interpretation. According to this perspective, the game was less a celebration of dominance and more a reflection of internal tension and questionable decision-making. The spotlight falls squarely on Caitlin Clark, widely regarded as one of the most dynamic offensive playmakers in modern basketball, whose role in the game became a point of intense scrutiny. Instead of being utilized as a primary offensive engine, Clark was reportedly limited in both minutes and influence, even placed out of a natural position at times. Critics argue that such decisions disrupted the offensive rhythm, forcing the team into slower, more predictable half-court sets that played directly into Spain's defensive structure. Meanwhile, established players like Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and Kalia Copper carried larger on-ball responsibilities, but with mixed efficiency. The result, from this viewpoint, was an offense that lacked fluidity and struggled to maximize its most potent asset. Despite these constraints, Clark's overall impact throughout the tournament remained impossible to ignore. Her performances resonated beyond individual games, ultimately earning her the distinction of FIBA World Cup MVP, an honor that underscores her global influence regardless of internal team dynamics. For some, this recognition serves as a stark contrast to how she was deployed on the court, fueling debate about whether strategic decisions were purely tactical or influenced by deeper locker room politics. In the end, while the gold medal stands as an undeniable achievement, the conversation surrounding how it was won may linger far longer than the final score itself.
Let's take a look. Number 1 in points, number 1 in assists, number 1 in true shooting percentage, number 1 in plus minus, number 1 in 2-point field goal.
The claim that Caitlin Clark exposed establishment suppression tactics is built on a dramatic interpretation of her statistical dominance. Supporters point to her leading metrics, top in points, assists, plus minus, and even 2-point field goal percentage, as overwhelming proof of her impact. For a 24-year-old perimeter guard to reportedly shoot with such efficiency, outperforming traditional frontcourt players, is framed as a direct contradiction to critics who question her scoring versatility. In this narrative, her numbers are portrayed not just as impressive, but as a statistical dismantling of veteran hierarchies, fueling intense reactions across social media where debates about fairness, recognition, and player roles have become increasingly polarized. However, the leap from dominant performance to institutional suppression is far more speculative. While players like Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi are often invoked symbolically in these discussions as representatives of a previous era, there is no verified evidence that any organized effort exists to suppress Clark's role or influence. High-level team decisions, rotations, positioning, and ball handling responsibilities are typically shaped by tactical considerations, matchups, and coaching philosophy rather than coordinated agendas. Similarly, claims of a dramatic corporate surrender tied to the WNBA collective bargaining process are not supported by credible public reporting. What is real, though, is the scale of Clark's impact. Her performances have undeniably intensified conversations about generational change, playing style, and marketability in women's basketball. The reaction, both supportive and critical, reflects a sport in transition, where rising stars challenge established norms. But separating measurable on-court excellence from broader conspiracy claims is essential. The former is backed by data, while the latter remains largely driven by interpretation and emotion rather than confirmed fact.
Keep those people on threads away from me. After a prolonged labor battle, the WNBA and WNBA Players Association reached a verbal agreement on the terms of a new collective bargaining agreement early Wednesday, just 51 days before the league's 30th season is set to tip off. Quote, the progress made in these discussions marks a transformative step forward for players.
The timeline surrounding the WNBA labor negotiations has been framed by some as a dramatic turning point driven by the meteoric rise of Caitlin Clark. After weeks of tense, highly publicized standoffs that threatened to disrupt a landmark season, a verbal agreement was reportedly reached just weeks before tip-off. In this interpretation, the sudden breakthrough is attributed to shifting leverage, owners recognizing the surge in viewership, sponsorship, and overall attention tied to Clark's presence, particularly following her international recognition. The argument suggests that her impact on ratings and global interest reshaped the financial conversation, forcing both sides to reassess their positions in real time. At the same time, this narrative often overstates the simplicity of what is, in reality, a complex negotiation process. Collective bargaining agreements are influenced by multiple factors: long-term revenue projections, league growth, player welfare standards, media rights deals, and broader market trends. While Clark's influence on popularity and visibility is undeniable, there is no confirmed evidence that a single player, no matter how impactful, dictated the outcome of negotiations or caused either side to cave. Claims that veteran players lack standalone value or that the league's entire financial structure depends solely on one individual are not supported by credible financial reporting or league data. What is more grounded is that the new agreement, if finalized along the lines being discussed, could significantly improve player compensation, raise salary caps, and enhance professional standards across the league. Veteran players, including figures like Alicia Clark, have long advocated for better pay, benefits, and working conditions, and these negotiations reflect years of collective effort rather than a single moment or personality. Clark's rise may have accelerated attention and added urgency, but the deal itself is better understood as a result of sustained pressure, evolving economics, and a league entering a new phase of growth.
This is Alicia Clark. What we just accomplished is going to change the lives of so many players, Clark said. We got you the best houses that they're going to pay for. And speaking from experience, players like me are going to be the ones that I think feel it the most. Yeah, the players on their way out? Yeah. That's why it's taking so long. That's why it's been taking so long, because old players...
Comments from veterans like Alicia Clark have added another layer to the ongoing debate around the WNBA negotiations, particularly highlighting how differently players at various career stages may view the stakes. Some interpret her remarks as evidence that veteran players, those nearing the later stages of their careers, felt a heightened urgency to secure improved salaries, benefits, and long-term protections before retirement. From this perspective, the drawn-out nature of the talks reflects not sabotage, but the reality of high-stakes labor negotiations where experienced players, younger stars, and league officials all have competing priorities and timelines. At the same time, claims that veterans deliberately held the season hostage solely to capitalize on the rise of Caitlin Clark oversimplify a much broader economic shift. The current momentum in women's basketball, driven by increased media deals, sponsorship growth, and rising fan engagement, has been building for years. Clark's impact has undeniably accelerated attention and added urgency, but the improved financial outlook is a result of collective progress across multiple generations of players rather than a single source of leverage. What is genuinely significant, however, is the logistical pressure now facing the league. With a new agreement still requiring formal ratification, front offices are navigating a compressed and highly complex calendar. Expansion plans involving cities like Portland and Toronto, the upcoming draft, and a potentially massive free agency window all converge within a tight time frame. Because many contracts were structured around the previous agreement, a large portion of the league's talent pool could hit free agency simultaneously, creating a fast-moving and unpredictable market. Teams such as the Indiana Fever will be under particular pressure to make decisive roster moves, especially given the spotlight created by Clark's performances. If and when the deal is finalized, the result could indeed be one of the most active off-seasons in league history, marked by rapid roster reshaping, aggressive contract negotiations, and a new financial landscape. But while the moment feels chaotic, it is also a sign of a league transitioning into a more competitive and economically robust era rather than evidence of a single-sided power play.
This sixth season could get very dark for the rest of the league. Could get very dark for the rest of the league. Amber Cox and Kelly Cross have got to put an actual team around her, a team that will play to her play style. Got to do that. Can't bring in some old veterans who think that they're going to go for the MVP this year. We got to bring in some role players that know their role. Shout out to The Rock. Know your role.
The pressure surrounding the Indiana Fever has never been higher, with executives like Amber Cox and Kelly Crossco facing what could be the most pivotal roster-building moment in franchise history. At the center of it all is Caitlin Clark, whose playmaking ability and offensive tempo have reshaped expectations. The argument being made is that constructing contender around her requires a very specific approach. prioritizing role players who complement her style rather than high-usage veterans who may disrupt offensive flow. That means targeting rim-running bigs who can finish in transition, defensive specialists who can switch and stretch the floor, and teammates comfortable thriving without dominating the ball. In this view, missteps in free agency, especially adding players whose styles clash with Clark's pace, could hinder the team's potential at a critical moment. At the same time, this perspective leans heavily into a build everything around one-star philosophy that, while compelling, is not without risk. Successful teams typically balance star power with versatility, chemistry, and adaptability over a long season. The WNBA is entering a new phase following its labor agreement, and the upcoming free agency period is expected to be unusually active, with many players available and teams reshaping their identities quickly. Clark's international success and rising influence have undeniably amplified attention on the Fever, but building a championship roster will still require careful evaluation, not just ideological commitment. What is clear is that the 2026 season is shaping up to be one of the most anticipated in league history. With increased scrutiny, evolving financial structures, and a rapidly changing competitive landscape, every decision made by front offices will carry amplified consequences. The Fever, in particular, are positioned at the center of this moment, tasked with turning immense potential into sustained success while navigating one of the most dynamic periods the league has ever seen.